Hey guys, welcome back to the movie summary. Beginning of the movie, we see a married girl named Anne. Her husband's name is John and he is a lawyer. She always feels depressed. So she goes to a psychiatrist. Hearing her talk, psychiatrist tells that you are thinking too much about things that are not under the control. Anne says I can't be happy with my husband. He invited his friend Dalton to house without telling me. On the other hand, we see John. John goes to meet Cynthia at her house after finishing his office. Cynthia is Anne's younger sister. They both talk for a while and make private time together. Actually, John had an affair with his wife's sister. After being intimate, John tells Cynthia that I won't see you often from now on. Because my friend Dalton is coming to meet me. I will be busy with him. Dalton goes to John's house before John gets home. There Anne opens the door and says, "Who are you?" Anne does not know that he is Dalton. So Dalton plays a little game with her. He goes to the bathroom saying, "I have come to your house to take toilet." After he comes out of the bathroom, he tells Anne that he is Dalton. Later both of them keep talking. After a while John also comes. Later they all have dinner together. During dinner Dalton asks about Anne's family. Then she tells him about her family and about her sister. John and Anne ask Dalton what kind of house you want. For that, Dalton says a simple house is enough for me. Then Anne and Dalton start looking for a good home. Thinking this is a good time, John goes to meet with Cynthia. After they select a house, Dalton and Anne go to a restaurant. There they talk about little personal things. Dalton says I'm gay, but I don't mind. After they had spoken thus, Anne again goes to her psychiatrist. There she tells him that Dalton isn't as bad as I thought he was, he's really good. Later she goes to Cynthia's house from there. Because it's his mother's birthday soon, she goes to talk about it. There Cynthia asks about Dalton. Anne says Dalton is too good. Hearing that, Cynthia says I will try him once. Then Anne says I will not give you his address. She thinks let's go to Dalton and say my sister wants to meet you. Dalton sits in his house watching the interviews he recorded. Most of those interviews were done with girls. In it they all discuss about their private matters. Anne comes Dalton's house. Then he stops his videos and changes his dress. Anne watches the videotapes. She reads the names above them. When Anne asked Dalton about this, he says he likes interviewing girls. Then Anne says let's watch these videotapes together. Dalton says no. Because he promised those girls that I will not share these videotapes with anyone. However, he says that all these videotapes involve talking about private matters. Hearing this, Anne apologizes to Dalton and goes to her home. She calls Cynthia and tells her that John was right, that Dalton was so different from everyone else. She says you can't do anything with him. After a while, John calls Cynthia and says that we will meet. Cynthia says no, I have work today, and goes to Dalton's house. Dalton sees Cynthia and asks why did you come here? Cynthia tells I spoke to my sister on the phone and she is very disturbed by what is happening here. I have come to know what is disturbing so much. Then Dalton shows those videotapes to Cynthia and says that your sister is disturbed because of them. Then she realizes that these videotapes contain very private discussions. Then Dalton asks if I should interview you. He promised that no one will watch your video except me. Cynthia says okay to that. Next Dalton takes her interview. In it she shares all her private things with Dalton. After the interview she goes home. Cynthia calls John and comes home and they make private time together. The next day, Cynthia calls Anne and tells her everything that happened with Dalton. That evening Anne goes to meet Cynthia, who works at the bar. Anne shows Cynthia the dress she bought for her mother. Just then John calls Cynthia. She picks up the call and say, I can't talk to you now because Anne is here. That night Anne asks John, are you cheating on me? John says no. He asks if I did, what is the proof? Anne has no proof, so she diverted the matter. The next day John goes to Cynthia's house to meet her. There she tells John everything that happened with Dalton. Also tells about a recorded video. Hearing this, John gets angry and says how can you trust a stranger? Then Cynthia says I believed him because you know him. I trust him more than you. Because you are cheating on your wife, you are a cheater. So they both get into a fight. Meanwhile, Anne is cleaning the house when she finds Cynthia's diamond. Then she realizes that John and Cynthia are having an affair. Anne immediately goes to Dalton and tells him everything that happened. Dalton heard this and said he already knew it. Dalton finds out about this when he interviews Cynthia. Anne says that I also want to record my videotape with you. Dalton then interviews her and records the video. Next she goes to her house. After a while John approaches her and speaks. But Anne is silent. At one point she tells John that she wants a divorce. Then John says to Anne, "Where have you been before?" Then Anne, "The first was with Dalton earlier. It says that I also shot my videotape." Hearing this, John gets angry and goes to Dalton and beats him badly. He also locks him in a room. Later he watches a videotape of his wife. In that video Anne says that I am never happy with my husband. I wish you were with me instead of my husband. Anne asks about the relationship in Dalton's life. Then Dalton tells sadly that was once in a relationship with a girl named Elizabeth. But someone has separated us. Anne knows that John was previously in a relationship with a girl named Elizabeth. She asks Dalton if John caused the two of you to break up. Then he says, "I don't know who he is, but he separated us. I came here to look for him." So they both talk and do romance. Then the video will end. After watching that video, John walks up to Dalton and says, "I'm the one who broke you up," and leaves. After John leaves, Dalton destroys all the videotapes. Next day we see John in the office. He is very sad. On the other hand, Dalton and Anne are sitting and talking romantically. This is how this movie ends. 99% people watch my videos without subscribing. I am working hard to make these videos. My humble request to subscribe my channel to grow.